Okay. Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Alan Singer.
And this is being brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Zoom, and hopefully airing next Monday on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. We're doing this session Wednesday, the 13th of March. And let's put some stuff in perspective. Despite statistical analysis and the fact that we know violent crime has been going down since the pandemic ended across the country in major metropolitan areas, because of a recent spike in crime in New York subways, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, ordered the National Guard to start checking stuff in the New York City. Basically, she ordered a presence of close to 1,000 or 650, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, National Guard in the New York City subway. Let's dig into that briefly at least. I mean, is this more political posturing or perception being reality? What is it?
I mean, it makes a strong visual statement. I mean, it's National Guard, and it's not just the presence of the Guard, but in the beginning, at least, the Guard with their long guns. I forget what type of gun. You might know what they are, Eric. But yeah, visually, it definitely struck a chord. And some writers said they felt safer. Some of them felt intimidated by the presence of people with long guns and random searches. And people always wonder, how they do the random. And I'm always carrying bags on the way to a press event or whatever. So it visually, it made a statement. In reality, I don't know if it made a difference.
I'm a regular subway rider, and so the National Guard, the police are basically stationed at the entrances, but the entrances are not where the problems are taking place. My primary subway is the E train, and in almost all the time, there are homeless people sleeping on the subway cars. And I think that's what people react to, because they end up being crushed to the sides because someone is taking up a whole seat. Even the pushing on the subways, that's got a lot of publicity, that had nothing to do with weapons. Having the people by the entrance checking for a gun or a knife is not going to stop either the homeless on the subway or the problem of people being pushed.
So we've got subway advocates, pros and cons. Some people are saying perception is reality. And so if people feel unsafe, they're not going to ride the subways. And so the subways will not come back to its full complement of users. And therefore the revenues will continue to stay low, et cetera, et cetera. And some people are saying, yeah, but if perception is reality, seeing the National Guard and an additional 1,000 cops that the mayor himself ordered to beef up the subways after the New Year's increase in violent crimes on the subway. Some of the people interviewed said, look, this stuff's not happening. I mean, even though the subway statistics show key stations, well-populated, Times Square, 34th Street, those stations are the bulk of where most of these assaults were taking place. Other people said, hey, we are in Pelham Bay, up where we are out in Brooklyn, we got just as much stuff happening out there. The statistics that the subway keeping says no, but the perception is yes. So are they feeling safer? Probably. I'm guessing that, yeah, in this case, perception is reality.
I mean, it's also done for another reason. I mean, it bothers me. I'm the son of a subway worker, he worked in Coney Island subway yards. I'm tired of the casual fare beating by people who can easily pay the fare. Just watching businessmen go through the gates or hop the turnstiles, and it's done freely. And that was part of the reason for the visual effect. I get that, but the safety, as Alan said on the platform, it doesn't affect that because that's not where the folks are deployed.
I'll button it up with my experience. I just started riding the subways again. Because of the pandemic, I stayed away. And here I am going back to the subways. And because I'm in the vulnerable population, I'm wearing my mask because I'm not going to be amongst crowds. And I look around, me, maybe one other person has a mask in my subway car. And so the lack of safety for me is the lack of public awareness about you still need to be masking up in these subways to stop spreading germs or stop proliferating this COVID virus that keeps recycling in a new format. So if they want to make the subways safer for my money, you need to go back saying, we highly recommend and want you to wear a mask. And I'm not hearing that message. But anyway, so much for my personal take on subway safety. Speaking of safety and accuracy of statistical data, etc. Do we want to talk about statistical data and or media stuff with, should we segue to the House passing the TikTok ban?
Yeah.
Sure.
Bob, you're a tech guru. There's a lot of arguments for a need for a TikTok ban. But from the tech point of view, talk to us about how effective it might be or what, before I get into more background on why I think it should be.
Okay. Well, I mean, TikTok is the popular app which people use for short videos, and it's extremely popular with younger users. I mean, beyond the dances and the challenges and whatnot, a lot of creators use it to monetize their work. Photographers, videographers, dance teachers, yoga people use TikTok a lot. And the problem is that it's owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And first of all, in China, there's basically no respect for intellectual property anyway. And the issue here is that being a Chinese company, here in the US, we're afraid that the algorithms will help export data to China. And once the data is in China, laws require ByteDance, Chinese law require ByteDance to turn over what the Communist Party government asked them to. They have their hands tied there. So the proposal is to restrict TikTok from the app stores, get TikTok sold to an American company, and if that's not done, down the road, possibly ban TikTok. That's basically where it is, right, Eric?
Yeah, pretty much. They have given TikTok an ultimatum. They say divest of your Chinese Communist Party affiliation. ByteDance says we're not owned by the Chinese Communist Party. We're a private entity, but ByteDance is beholden to the Chinese Communist Party because of that law. The Chinese Communist Party can demand anything of any corporation, not just ByteDance. And if they're operating in China, they have to cough up whatever the Chinese Communist Party demands of them. The government says we want it, they give it. Even all these other American companies comply with that stuff. So the bottom line is China, as you said, Bob, respects nothing. They've been purloining all our tech stuff illegally for the longest time. But the Department of Defense banned 3 years ago, if not longer, any device in anybody in the Department of Defense for using TikTok. And I believe other government agencies said because they're correct. That's a big C for collecting data, personal and otherwise. And China actually has done that. They control their population just by the way they deal with their personal data. And so they're scoffing up personal data from across the globe, and TikTok just facilitates that. So I agree with the Department of Defense. I agree with the fact that they give ByteDance an option. You can keep your app in our stores. You just have to divest your ownership, sell it to somebody else at whatever profit you want to make. I believe they did that to Grindr, the LGBTQ app 3 years ago. Grindr didn't say, oh no, they just went ahead and sold it. There's an argument, Alan, that folks are making about this is a curtailment of First Amendment rights. Address that, because I think that's bogus, but I don't want to monopolize this.
It was interesting looking at who voted against the TikTok ban. And what you had was people on the left and on the right both voted no, but the people in the center all voted yes. I think that the right tends to be more libertarian, and they're afraid they're the ones who are going to be censored. And because they keep accusing the media of censoring them. And I think on the left, it was more of a commitment to civil liberties and freedom of speech. I know I have another issue. There's been general discussion of regulating the social media, partly because of the way with the social media to sell has been very irresponsible. I know right now there are parents in the city who are suing TikTok because it posts videos of kids surfing on the roofs of subway trains, and it promotes these. And their teenage son died on the J train because he was trying to do a TikTok video. So, I mean, there are real issues here. The other is the sexualization of young girls who, a few years back, there was a big thing when this preteen girl disappeared. Joan Benet, they believed she was murdered. Her parents had always dressed her up like a little doll. Well, we see that on TikTok all the time. So there are very real issues about what's happening with social media. It's not just China.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Well, my thing about the curtailment of free speech, it's not as if there's not another platform that the folks that are doing their stuff on TikTok can't move to. And it's not as if they're not saying, we don't want to ban you, we just don't like you being owned by the Communist Chinese Party and the Chinese government, because that is a definite threat to national security. And the way China runs TikTok in China with different algorithms, they do all kinds of educational stuff. You don't see the crazy sexualization. You don't see any of the stupid dances and challenges. Chinese government doesn't allow that stuff on Chinese TikTok, but they let it fly all over TikTok on the rest of the globe. So I think the free speech is bogus, that argument, because they can always go to Instagram, they can go to any other app where they can have a platform just the same way that they do it on TikTok. That doesn't really bother me, but that's bogus. Okay. But my thinking, as you're saying, Bob, is speak to me about what you were thinking.
Well, I mean, my thoughts was that I had my misgivings about what effect this would really have. And, like you said, there are other platforms you can go to. I mean, the subway surfing on the J train could have just as easily been posted on Instagram. It wouldn't have lasted as long, but it would have shown up. Same with Facebook. Might have gotten pulled after people complained about it. But I don't see where I don't see where changing the ownership from China to the U.S. will suddenly make it a well-patrolled platform, because neither is Facebook, neither is Twitter, neither are the other platforms. They have their own problems, and changing national ownership doesn't change that. If you think it's those who think it's toxic now probably won't see a change if there was a change of ownership. So anyway, that's where my head goes. I'm not sure how much of a real effect this will have. I do understand the security concerns, right, Eric? It shouldn't be in any Department of Defense phone or any government phone because of the algorithms. But we do have the NSA here, and the NSA is damn good at going through apps, going through websites, going through internet sites, and reverse engineering the algorithms. And I haven't heard, anything that terrible about TikTok. You say there was a national security conference the other day, Eric, where they had a briefing, and maybe some of this came up.
But I didn't see the reports on that briefing, but I do remember 3 years ago when DOD actually came right out and said, no, this is verboten for any of our devices because we know that there is indeed a serious national security threat. Now, they had a briefing for the members of Congress, which is what you're referring to just yesterday, if my memory served me correctly, because they wanted to give them a briefing before they came to this vote today. today, Wednesday the 13th. And so they wanted them well briefed on why they felt it was national security. And as you can see by the vote, there was overwhelming bipartisan support to give TikTok that option, divest, or we're going to try to institute a ban. And so I guess with that, we can move on to other issues.
Okay. I mean, but the last thing I'll say is maybe a limit on data collection would be better than a total ban. Because then if the data collected is innocuous, then there's basically nothing to export. But yeah, we need to move on.
If there's a way to do that, that would be at least an option. If there's a way to do that, yeah. Speaking of options on what to do and where to go, I saw something even as we were preparing, as I was trying to do some research on TikTok, where the South by Southwest Festival has pretty much come up with they just started it, I think this week, from 13th to the 16th or something like that. And there's a brouhaha right now going on because as much as 60 bands. I mean, give us a quick background of South by Southwest before I continue. How many things in that festival?
South by Southwest is a major music, tech, political. I mean, it's arts, just such a arts. Yes, it's such a big festival conference. So many components to it, and it's been growing in Austin, Texas, to the point where there was talk about pulling it from Austin because it got so big. But now, over the last few days, apparently dozens of bands and speakers have pulled out of South by Southwest because of military sponsorship, including the Army, which is a major sponsor, and apparently a lot of other defense-connected, companies.
And beyond those kind of companies, yeah.
And go ahead, Eric. So you're reading now that they're pulling out because of. Go ahead.
Yeah, because of so much military sponsorship, so many companies that have been doing stuff for the Army and the Department of Defense, and the fact that the Army itself is one of the sponsors and sponsoring some of the forums at South by Southwest. And so the folks that, like the musicians and the bands that pulled out the speakers, that are aghast at what's going on in that Israel-Hamas war, and so many dead and dying without any pushback from our federal government about trying to put this ceasefire into place, that they have in protest said, no, we are withdrawing our participation in the South by Southwest Festival. And so this war just keeps making more fallout across the globe, whether it's in Ukraine or in Europe, or Ukraine being a part of Europe, whether it's here at home. I don't know. Alan, you have a local story that actually impacts on the fallout from what's going on in that war, right?
Yeah, there have been incidents in New York City schools, mostly high schools, where kids have been accused of basically anti-Semitism. One of the more recent ones was at Beacon High School in Manhattan, where they found both swastikas and anti-Black slogans in the bathroom. Now, for me, I'm not seeing a wave of anti-Semitism. I think one of the things that's happened as people draw attention to these things, what happens is kids will pick up on it. I don't think we're looking at a wave of anti-Jewish feeling, but I think that the attention to what's been taking place in the media, but also in classrooms, has stimulated this. So kids begin to graffiti swastikas. Anti-Semitism, the kind of stereotypical hatred of Jews that led to the European Holocaust and has been part of European society for 1,000 years, is a very terrifying thing for the Jewish community. The arguing that the war in Gaza is producing this, I'm not sure if that's the case, but it certainly has drawn attention to incidents.
Is it the matter of copycats, young people wanting to be noticed by basically doing the same thing and, you know, seeing if they make the paper, so to speak, with these?
It could very well be that, Bob. There was a school in Brooklyn where a kid supposedly drew a Hitler mustache and went around doing the Nazi salute. Now, this is kind of crazy stuff that teenagers will do. That doesn't mean that it's a wave of anti-Semitism. It just means that the focus of the war in Gaza has drawn attention to these things.
Yeah.
Kids shouldn't do it. But I don't know if I don't think the Jews in the United States are being victimized. Personally, I would like to see Biden turn off the spigot, tell Netanyahu and tell Israel, we will no longer provide weapons that are being used for the destruction of Gaza. Whatever happened before does not justify what you're doing.
And we're at the point today, Wednesday, the 13th, where they're about to basically take out the last standing part of Gaza with another offensive. And with that, there'll be no place else for anyone to return to anywhere in Gaza, if that's done. And, you know, that's, I take it, Eric, is part of the pullout from South by Southwest. You know, they see this happening. We're supplying the weapons. They don't want the weapons to be there for that purpose. We get it. Hamas needs to be worked on, but yeah, there's so many civilians and innocent people being killed at this point. Yeah, Netanyahu has to get the message. He hasn't gotten the message. He will not get the message because that's Netanyahu.
I think you're correct about that totality of what's going on there being why folks that were originally going to attend South by Southwest decided to pull out. Interestingly enough, at the State of the Union message, Joe Biden was caught on a hot mic saying he was having his conversation with Netanyahu saying, you got to have a come to Jesus moment. That was the direct quote.
Yes.
Yeah, no, he was asking,
that's what he said.
Mean by that was, look, we got to fix what's going on. We can't let this thing, because it's damaging your image. It's damaging, basically saying damaging my image. And basically the conversation was, we need to fix this. But having said that to him, he still didn't say, I'm going to stop the spigot of arms till you get a ceasefire, which to me is the only message that's going to actually be effective as far as Netanyahu is concerned. But
Biden did say that a two-state solution is the solution. Yes. And that's one thing that Netanyahu, you know, that's basically shoving that message up in Netanyahu's face.
Yeah, I got all this hammering going on behind me just as we get into some serious. How much time do we have left?
We have about 4.5 minutes, and the hammering isn't too loud at my end.
Okay, well.
The other thing about the South by Southwest is, I think it's important.
South by Southwest, yeah, what about it?
That's important to people to understand. When the United States gives foreign aid, it doesn't give people money. What it does is it gives other countries credits to purchase American goods and American weapons. So one of the things that has happened is that all the money going to Ukraine and going to Israel over Gaza is not really going to Ukraine and Gaza, to Israel. It's going to American corporations that produce weapons. And in 1961, just before he left the White House, Dwight Eisenhower had a very powerful speech where he warned Americans about the power of the military-industrial complex. Yeah. Because what Eisenhower, who was a general and understood what war meant, Eisenhower said, you know, what you have is a partnership between the military and industry makes money as military burns its weapons.
Yeah, that's basically why folks are upset with these corporations being in their state. But to tag this, if we have enough time, is I want to give a shout out to the fact that Heather Cox Richardson actually called out the name of the independent journalist, Jonathan Karl is his name, who actually blew the whistle on the fact that that Alabama senator who did the State of the Union rebuttal basically misrepresented the fact that horrendous story that she told and tried to lay off on Joe Biden's watch. Jonathan Katz dug deep. Let me make sure I'm giving the right name.
And you're talking about
Katz.
Alabama Senator Katie Britt?
Yes, Jonathan Katz, because I think Carl is the ABC guy. Jonathan Katz was the independent journalist who said Britt misrepresented. That was not on Joe Biden's watch. It was George W. Bush. And it didn't happen in the United States. It didn't happen on the border. It was not the cartel. It was some pimp in Mexico when that young woman was a teenager. And so that was a total misrepresentation. And
Can
so
we say lie rather than misrepresentation?
I normally we would say lie, and basically let's call it a lie. That's what it was. And so the Republicans are lying. I wanted to get into that New York Times-Sienna poll about misinterpretation or misskewed data, because it looks like they heavily skewed to rural areas when they did the poll, undercounted the urban suburban areas, more rural, and so that's why Trump came out ahead in the New York Times-Sienna poll.
So this is the poll that put Trump ahead, what was it, 48 by 42%?
43 to 47, something like that.
Something like that.
48,
5
43.
points, right? And
Okay.
it was because of the geographical area that they did the sampling. And we can dig into that even more so folks can understand, because it was a young man who's not normally a political guy, but a former guy who did stuff in gambling, but he evidently put up the numbers, dug into the actual polling figures to come up with the fact that he said that was skewed geographically, and that's why it came out that way.
It was.
Came out that way.
It was on the Dash files, DASH, and you can find that on Substack if you search for it.
His name is Dash Costa.
Yes.
All right. So that being said, I think we're about out of time, right, Bob?
Let's check. I think we have about 30 seconds left.
Yes, just in time to say this has been Media Watch, folks. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tait.
I'm Alan Singer.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And Ray was not under the weather. He had another commitment, so he couldn't join us, but hopefully he'll be with us the next time. And folks, hopefully you'll be with us the next time. Stay well, stay safe. We'll catch you the next time.